Some thought it might be Black Monday today. Didn't turn out quite that bad, but there's still time. Let's talk about what's happening in the stock market and what we need to be watching for. There's a couple of interesting things to keep an eye on. Remember, news is going to say a lot of stuff. We really need to take our information from the charts and some historical precedents here. Now, obviously, the tariff game and how it's being played right now could be very different than past things that we've seen. But all we can go off of is how the market reacts in very, very uncertain situations. And I think we're in a very uncertain situation. So what can we expect in the market? There's an interesting little occurrence that happens in the VIX. Now, we talked about the VIX a lot and said if the VIX stays and doesn't close above kind of 28, 29, this is our fear gauge. Remember, this is how much protection people are buying for their portfolios. If it stays kind of in those high 20s and below, everything's fine. If it gets above, that's where we see panic. Now, we certainly saw a move above, but what does a move above this kind of 28 level mean? What does that mean for the market? What should we be looking for? Well, there's a couple of interesting occurrences. We saw the VIX make a big spike here back in August, and obviously we've seen some other big spikes, 2020, 2008, 2018, just those kinds of times we see the VIX make some big aggressive spikes. But here's an interesting little statistic, and a shout out to Mr. Charlie Bilello. He does some great research and puts up some really good numbers. And I wanted to give him credit because I think this is a great point to bring up. The VIX increased 109% last week, the third biggest weekly spike ever. So what happens when the VIX does this? The 1, 3, and 5-year horizons, when the VIX goes that high and closes weekly above those levels, there's one thing to see the VIX spike and then come right back down in the same day or the next day. But when there's a weekly close above a level, there's things that we have to start watching. And he's got this interesting chart here that I think is very important and very helpful to kind of give us a little bit of information. When we see the VIX do a weekly close, here's the start of the week and the end of the week. And right now, keep in mind, the VIX is at almost 50 right now. So where are some times that we've seen some 50s and some 60s? 2008, there's a 70 right there. And then what happens 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, right? We end the year 22% up, 2 years, 35% up. And by 5 years out, the stock market's run 110%. So when we see some of these big high levels at the end of the week, there can be some very, very nice payouts here. And you can see that the vast majority of these kinds of spikes, you know, some of these smaller spikes, right, going from 10 to 18, okay, that's not really in that kind of crazy territory. That's a 76% spike up, but that's not in that crazy territory of, okay, we're above the long-term moving price average of the VIX. So some of those ones, right, 15 into the 20s, 11 into the 17s, those ones tend to not have as big of a reaction. But when we see something go, you know, from I don't know, these kinds of examples here, 17 to 40, 21 to 45, those kinds of numbers, we tend to see a much bigger, better positive reaction over the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year period. And so it's going to be interesting to see if it plays out that way this time. Are we going to get a positive run here because of the type of spike that we have seen in the VIX? And that is the big question. Of course, there are a lot of people that are saying we have never seen this kind of thing before. And it's true. We haven't seen a really aggressive tariff, trade war, global trade war unfold like it has now. But then again, had we seen a dot-com bubble burst like it did and the stock market sold off 50%, did we see a mortgage crisis like that before? Did we see 2020 happen? Did we see 2022 when interest rates went up at their fastest pace in history? We had been rolling on 0 to 2% interest rates for a decade plus, and in 2022 rates go up at their fastest history. These are all examples of things where we thought we've never seen this before. This is going to ruin the market. This is going to ruin the economy. I know tariffs are a very, very decisive and partisan kind of situation, but what we have to keep in mind as traders is what does the market do in these situations we've never seen before? And remember, we have a lot of situations we have never seen before, and we have a lot of history that tells us how the market behaves with that. So just keep an eye on the VIX, keep an eye on these levels, and let's see what plays out. I'll have more updates coming as we go. Thanks, everybody.